to the Thoughtful Childbirth September webinar. Tonight, it's all about the breastfeeding special, the issues around breastfeeding and how to cope. Yeah, breastfeeding doesn't always go as planned and as easily as we'd like it to. And sometimes we do have a few problem areas, but as long as we know about them and we know how to sort it out initially, and we know who to call when there's a problem, it really can make it insignificant what you've actually gone through. So let's hope we're able to answer a lot of your questions this evening about how to best cope with it all. Okay, for those that don't know me, I'm Lynne Bluff. My background's a nursing sister and a midwife and a childbirth educator, but really I'm passionate about informed choices, evidence-based birth, knowing your options, natural birth, breastfeeding. Those are all the things that are just closest to my heart. And so really that's why we want to give you as much information every time we run these webinars, so that you can actually be really well prepared. You can have an easier journey, that this is a wonderful journey, and that actually birth and breastfeeding can be wonderful experiences. That's really the name of the game. Just want to say a huge thanks to Jason, Tammy, and Seth behind the scenes. Without them, we wouldn't have these fantastic opportunities to impart wonderful information. So we appreciate their time, their attention, and their dedication just as much as my time and dedication. They really are their fantastic supports, both for me and the webinars. Thank you too to our sponsors, who tonight are Silver Mama and Natura, and we'll hear a little bit more from them during this evening. In case you don't know us at Baby Talk, and perhaps this is your first webinar that you're joining tonight with us, we have really a wide range of information to give you so that you can access as much good information as you possibly can. And we've got the Expectant Mother's Guide and the Expectant Father's Guide. They little A5 magazines, they're available. They're also available online at expectantmothersguide.coza, and they're free to access. You can download it as an app, the Expectant Mother's Guide, both from the App Store and Google Play. It's all free to access, as well as the Expectant Mother's Guide Journey app, which has access to the magazines, as well as a whole lot of other information and useful things to actually share with you. We've got the To Mommy newsletter, our digital collated monthly newsletter. So we know that you want to actually read off the internet. Are you sure you're reading off good websites? And if it's not your field of expertise, it's very easy to not know if you're going to a good website or not. And so we help navigate that by sending you to read interesting articles from different websites. And nobody pays us to send them to the websites. We source interesting articles off websites that we know are good and reputable. So you can then know that's a good place to go and get really good evidence-based, up-to-date information. We also do consults on birthing options and informed choices. We run these thoughtful webinars once a month, and please, you can go and check it out and book your seat for the rest of the year if you'd like to. I think they're all up there on thoughtfulchildbirth.coza. Next month's webinar is on Wednesday, the 5th of October at 7 p.m. and we're looking at how to look after a sick child. And really, it's a good idea to learn how to do that before you have one of your own and you have a sick child on your hand. Learn how to actually care, when to call the doctor, when to seek further attention, and how to actually get through a crisis. And so that's really very useful to learn how to navigate that. In November, we're doing prematurity and what it entails, and that's on Thursday, the 10th of November. Okay, so let's look at the lactation station. Now, breastfeeding, it's a normal event that occurs ideally within the first hour or two after birth and continues for as long as both parent and baby desire. As long as that baby is sucking on the breast, your breast will produce breast milk, so you and your baby can choose how long you actually breastfeed for. In reality, breastfeeding is the next big challenge after birth. We know that while natural, it is often something that a new baby and parent need to learn as this dyad, and there can be challenges during those early days and weeks as you actually try to navigate this very, very different path. And for some mums, they haven't seen anybody breastfeed, and this is really not kind of a natural thing, as whether you've seen your sisters and your aunts and your cousins all breastfeeding. That is a lot more natural. You've seen it, you're more comfortable with it. But either way, it needs to be navigated, and there are challenges for the majority of people, but life is one big challenge that is thrown at us. And as long as you know how to negotiate these challenges, we can be successful in what we endeavor to do. Now, some of those challenges require the use of specialized equipment, while other situations may arise when new parents find it helpful to have some things on hand to help things go more smoothly. Many of these items are maybe completely unfamiliar to you, but as we gain more familiarity about what items might be handy to have around when lactation is getting started or facing some hurdles, okay, this is by no means an evening where we're saying everything we're discussing you need to actually go and buy. No, not at all. What we are saying, know that these things are available, and should you have some of these challenges, you actually know what is out there, and it's a lot easier to negotiate when you know what is available. So you can pretend that tonight here is this a whole lot of breastfeeding items in a box, and we're going to pass this box around to each one of you, and you're each going to pull out an item, and we need to guess as to the purpose and the use of the item. So tonight, for some of the time, we're going to have a lot of participation, and we need you to participate with your ideas as to what you think that particular item is going to be useful for pertaining to breastfeeding. And if you participate tonight, we'll send you a gift voucher for a hydrotherapy and massage for your little ones at Hydrotopia in Edenvale. So we will email you this gift voucher. So please do participate and actually add your thoughts and comments and suggestions into the chat box. And let's have a fun, interesting, and educational evening. Okay, what is that, and what do you think it is in the lactation station box for? Let's get those chat boxes going. Any ideas? Looks like a teddy bear to me, and why? What do you think the significance of that teddy bear is? Getting some chats. Let me access them. Let's see. Positioning for comfort, holding baby up like a pillow to demonstrate breastfeeding. Wonderful to rest your arm on. Play, baby to play with maybe. To demonstrate breastfeeding, cushion with a bear, teddy bear comfort, teddy bear to prop mum up and keep her comfy. Terrific, that's what I like. Yes, it's a teddy bear, and it's a reminder to give baby lots of cuddles, particularly if things get difficult and challenging with breastfeeding. We might maybe just forget to give our baby the cuddles they deserve when we're finding it challenging. So just have that teddy bear thought and give your baby lots of cuddles. Okay, and also teddy bear. Okay, bear spelled the other way, B-A-R-E, skin to skin. And remember how important skin to skin is with breastfeeding. Okay, the next item, let's hear what it is and what you think it's there for. Yes, an apple, mom's nutrition. Yes, Sam says it's her favorite for mom. Yeah, why else might we have an apple? Mom to snack on. Yes, snack while breastfeeding, correct. Apple for energy and hydration. Wonderful. Yes, it's an apple. And everybody's correct about mom snacking and nutrition, but it's a reminder about a correct latch. For those that were listening in to last month's webinar, and Samantha did a wonderful demonstration on how to actually latch your baby, and it's taking that bite out of that apple. Okay, I'm sure she'll refresh your mind a little bit later if you've forgotten. Okay, but yeah, that's really what it's about, as well as the healthy snacks for breastfeeding. Terrific. What is the next one? Yeah, have you got any idea what these funny contraptions are? Yeah, nipple caps. Nipple caps for sore nipples, for cracked nipples. Yeah, we're getting the idea. Okay, these are what are called silver mama nipple caps, and they're actually crafted from a 125 sterling nipples. That's especially effective because of the incredible healing properties of silver, and that is what makes them stand out and be so unique. You don't need any additional balms or creams, and this prevents your baby from ingesting anything foreign or unfamiliar, and they are one of the best methods of preventing and treating cracked nipples. So we're just going to hear a little bit more about them. They're very interesting. Okay, hopefully you know a little bit more about Silver Mama, and go and check them out at silvermama.coza. Okay, the next item in our box, what do you think that is, and what could it be for? Okay, just while you're thinking about what these are on screen now, to answer the questions, they are available to order online from silvermama.coza. I think they doing something with Take-A-Lot as well. They say, yes, the best things ever. They are amazing. Oh, I love those, as with first baby nipples hurt so bad. Yeah, it's amazing the healing properties of silver and how long they've been using silver for as in the medical environment. It's actually quite amazing, and with burns, because it's got such healing powers. Is it available in Durban stores? It's definitely available online, and that's probably your best option. Okay, let's have a look. We're saying this item is to pump milk. Then we get somebody who says it's a nipple puller to help with flat nipples. Yes, okay. So this is a nipple everter or nipple puller. And what this does, these are little miniature suction cups with a suction bulb at the end, for want of a better description. And you gently squeeze the suction and it helps draw that nipple out. Okay, if you've got nipples that stand out easily, you definitely don't need a nipple everter. If you have got flat nipples, it can actually help. And if you've got inverted nipples, it's a great idea to actually use during your pregnancy to try and help free your nipples so that it becomes easier for your baby to latch on. Okay, and any ideas as to what these are? No ideas. Milk collectors, breast shells. Yes, breast shields. Not a breast shield, it's a breast shell. Okay. So this is a breast shell. And if you have a look in the top picture on the box, it comes in two parts. Okay, one that has got the circle cut out that goes over your nipple, and then the other side that has got more of a rounded dome appearance and it clips on. If your nipples are sore, you can wear that in your bra and nothing is actually going to touch your nipple. And if you sterilize them, you can actually collect the milk that is released when you are breastfeeding on one side and you've got the letdown on the other side. So yes, you can collect breast milk in it as well. And they're really made generally from soft and flexible silicone material. And again, in certain circumstances, they are absolutely lifesavers and very useful. So as I said at the beginning, all of these different things are just useful to know about and how to use them. Okay, we move on to something a little bit different. Let's hear your ideas on this one. Yes, nipple shields. And as you can see, the nipple shields come in all sorts of sizes, shapes, and yeah, all different sizes and shapes, certainly. And it's just like in real life, everybody's nipples and breasts are different sizes and shapes, and they actually all work efficiently. Okay, so these are nipple shields. Okay, right, then we come to something called blebs. Okay, now let's learn a little bit about what a bleb is. Now, bleb is a milk blister or a blocked nipple pore or a nipple blister or simply milk under the skin. Okay, so it's got nothing to do with sore nipples or cracked nipples, but this is a milk blister, okay, not a sore blister. And this actually occurs when a tiny bit of skin actually overgrows a milk duct opening and the milk backs up behind it. And it's a painful white, clear or yellow dot on the nipple or the areola, and the pain is focused at that particular spot and just behind it because you're getting a build-up of pressure in that area because this milk isn't able to flow out anymore and it's building up, and so it's a very localized pain. And if you compress the breast so that milk is forced down the ducts, the blister will typically bulge outwards. Okay, so we say it's not the same as a blister on the nipple caused by friction, and that can be a red or a brown blood blister, and that's from friction and improper latch or improper sucking, and that is a problem blister, and the problem is nipple damage due to friction. And so a bleb is a milk blister, and that a little bit of skin has grown over one of those milk ducts. Now, the recommended treatment for a milk blister usually consists of 4 steps. We apply moist heat, we clean the skin, we nurse or pump with a hospital-grade pump, and we follow up with medication to aid the healing, and that might need to be repeated for several days or longer. So it's a good idea to apply moist heat because we want to soften that blister prior to nursing. And several times a day is a good idea. If you add a saline soak, saline being salt, prior to applying the moist heat. Now, Epsom salt soak before breastfeeding helps to open the milk duct opening and also aids in the healing. So you use a solution of Epsom salt, 2 teaspoons to 1 cup of water. And the Epsom salt is first dissolved in a small amount of very hot water, and then further water is added to cool it down enough to soak in. And try to add this Epsom salt soak to your routine at least 4 times a day. It really is beneficial to use the Epsom salts. Prior to nursing and directly after the Epsom salt soak, place an extremely hot, wet compress on the milk blister immediately before pumping. Be careful not to burn yourself, obviously. Okay, and a cotton ball soaked with olive oil can be used to soften the skin instead of the wet compress too. The second one is that we want to try and clear the skin from that milk duct because it's that skin that is overgrown the milk duct that is causing the blockage. Sometimes this might not be necessary, as the combination of the heat and the nursing or the pumping will actually cause the skin to expand and the blister to open. And it's wonderful. It's not sore when this blister opens because obviously the milk can come out and the pressure is then relieved. Hopefully it can be helpful to do one of the following at least once per day until the skin no longer grows over the duct. And you can rub the blister area with a moist washcloth. And if there's a plug protruding from the nipple, you can gently pull on it with clean fingers and loosen an edge of the blister by gently scraping with your fingernail, clean fingernails. If the above methods don't work, you can get a healthcare professional to use a sterile needle to open the blister. All right, the third step was that you need to nurse or breastfeed on that side or pump with a hospital grade pump. Nurse first on the breast with a milk blister directly after applying heat because your baby's going to have the strongest suck initially when he's really hungry and he's not tired and he's really energetic. And so you nurse on that side first. Before you nurse, it can be helpful to use a breast compression and attempt to hand express back behind and down toward the nipple to release any thickened milk that is backed up in the duct. If you have a look at the bottom picture, you can see that the milk actually has thickened and it comes out as a continuous little stream. Okay. And then once that has been cleared, then you'll be back to normal milk consistency. Sometimes clumps or strings of hardened milk, okay, often of a toothpaste consistency, can be expressed from the duct. There can be some additional treatments for these milk blisters if they keep recurring. Lecithin supplements can help to heal and prevent recurrent plugged ducts. And massaging the breast, the areola, and the nipple with a massage oil containing grapefruit seed extract can help to heal recurrent milk blisters. And to make the massage oil, mix a few drops of the grapefruit seed extract or citrus seed extract into the olive oil. Another treatment for persistent milk blisters is once per day, spray the breast and the nipple area with a solution consisting of 5 drops of grapefruit seed extract, a 1/4 cup of vinegar, and 2 cups of water. You can use a little bit more sparingly and wiped off before feeds because too much vitamin E can be toxic to your baby, but vitamin E can also be of help if you're really battling with these recurring milk blisters. Okay, so remember, none of these things are a train smash at all because we are learning about them, we're learning what they are, we're learning about how to actually treat them, and everything can return to normal. Okay, joining me tonight is Samantha Crompton, the baby lady. And for those of you who joined us last month, you're very familiar with who Samantha is. Hi, Sam, are you there?
I'm here. Can everyone hear me?
I could hear you indeed, yes.
Perfect, perfect. Cool. I'm so excited to see everyone online tonight. And I have to show you my new toy. My new demo toy. my boob demonstrating scarf.
Very smart indeed.
Perfect.
Good show. Okay, we'll hand you over to Sam. Tell me when you want the slides advanced.
Perfect. All right, so I don't think that needs any guessing as to what it is. And if anyone has ever experienced it, you know it's quite painful, but it's cracked or sore nipples. All right. So the first thing I want to talk about when it comes to cracked or painful nipples is to say that I don't want anyone to normalize this. Okay, can you see, I mean, looking at these pictures, there's nothing normal about that. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I hear so many moms go, oh yeah, my nipples were cracked for the first 2 or 3 weeks, but you know, that's normal. And I just powered through and now it's okay. All right. But I never hear how it's wonderful or anything. So I want to say to you, first of all, cracked and sore nipples is not normal. It's not something we should be powering through. There's often an underlying reason for it. So some of the reasons, something that can cause cracked and sore nipples, the most common is probably a poor latch. So if you're with us last month, we were chatting about how to get a nice, good latch. So it's always worth having a look at those videos and everything that we see. But I'm going to give you a quick reminder, okay, to have a good latch, because Lynne said I was reminding you. Remember, baby's nose is always to your nipple, head always in extension, a big apple bite, and a nice, big, good latch. So that baby is not nipple feeding, baby is breastfeeding, and that nipple is not being damaged at all. Okay, so definitely an important thing is to get a good latch. All right. Some of the other things that can cause it is if we have tethered oral tissues or oral restrictions, So those are things like tongue ties or lip ties or buccal ties, anything along those lines, which needs to be assessed and managed by your healthcare professionals as well. So if you feel your babies have got any of those and that's what's causing your cracked and painful nipples, always go and see your healthcare provider. Another big one is low supply. So when your milk supply is quite low and that baby is working really, really hard to get that milk out, can often cause a little bit of cracking and damage. So that's where we have to manage your milk supply a little bit to try and ease that, that harsh sucking that the baby does to get the milk out. And then on the flip side is when your milk supply is so fast and your letdown is really forceful and the babies are actually clamping down on the nipple to try and compensate and to try and slow that flow down a little bit, it can be equally damaging to your nipples. So everyone thinks fast supply or oversupply is a blessing, but it's it can also be sometimes really tricky, and we'll chat about that a bit later. But the most important thing with this is to actually try and find out the underlying reason for the cracked nipple. And what I don't want people to do is just put a plaster on it, as in, you know, just power through it or use a nipple shield or, you know, something like that just to get through it. I want you to find out what is causing it so that we can actually treat the underlying cause and still help manage you through it while the healing process is happening as well, right? Because it does still need to heal. Okay, but if you already do have cracked and sore nipples, we do have to still feed our babies. I know that's a daunting thought when your nipples are extremely painful. And I do remember this. I did have a cracked and bleeding nipple at one point, and I still remember sitting there in the middle of the night, sort of holding my baby going, okay, I'm ready. And then just as he was about to let, I'm like, no, wait, I'm not ready. I need a few more deep breaths. Okay, so it can be extremely painful and we still have to feed our baby. So just here are a few little tips once we found out the problem, but our nipples are still healing. Right, so the first thing is to start with the less injured side first. Because remember Lynne said earlier, when we're trying to remove the milk bleb, we start with the side with the milk bleb because the baby suck is really strong and they're very energetic. So now it's the dead opposite. We want that baby to be energetic and strong sucking on our less injured side, so that our injured side can have a little bit of just a little bit of less intensity later on in the feed as well. Then the next thing you can try is to apply a little bit of ice before the feed. So what that does is actually nuts the nipple a little bit, and that often helps the mom just get through that initial latch, because that first latch on when the baby latches and they're really hungry and they know exactly what they want can actually be the most painful. So just a little bit of numbing, a little bit of ice can actually help get you through that first latch, that initial latch. Then always look at trying different positions, because sometimes the crack is in a certain place. So by trying different ways to feed your baby, because remember, you can feed your baby 360 degrees. You've got all these different positions as long as you maintain your tummy to mummy position and your extension. You've got a lot of different positions you can try. So try all different things until you find what's the most comfortable for you while you are still healing. All right. If it is too painful to feed, because I know I've seen some horrific nipples. I promise my phone is filled with the most terrible pictures on some days. We do need to still protect the we still need to protect the milk supply. So I am going to ask you to still express, okay, because we need to prevent plugged ducts, we need to prevent mastitis, and we need to really control that supply. All right. And then what we can do is you can do a normal saline rinse after the feed to keep that nipple nice and clean, because what we're trying to prevent here is any further infection. And please, that you do need to keep them a little bit dry. So we just pat them dry. We just pat our nipples dry because we don't want to be rubbing and agitating their cracks at all. So nice little pats to just prevent that. Then what you can do is you can apply some expressed milk to the nipple, or if you do have some nipple creams that you can use, always good for soothing and moisture and a little bit of healing as well. Right, if you are in the position where you can walk around your house with your nipples exposed, that's always a good thing. Make sure your video is off on your Zoom and just give your nipples a little bit of air. And what's nice is it actually avoids that friction on there, because sometimes just a t-shirt is too much for those nipples. So air is our friend when we have cracked and painful nipples. All right. Then from a medication point of view, if you really are battling, you can take some ibuprofen just to help you deal with the pain a little bit. And then when you are taking a shower is to use some antibacterial soap, okay? Gently clean the area, make sure you've rinsed it nicely under running water. So the idea you can hear is we're just trying to keep everything clean and infection free. And then you heard from Silver Mama, so I'm sure they'll be very keen for you to try their products as well. Mine actually arrived this morning, so we'll do a nice little unboxing video for you on my site so we can see what's in there and test it out on a few of our moms who do have some cracked and sore and painful bleeding nipples. All right.
Okay, then we move on to tongue ties. And I think really what I just want to highlight is the fact that tongue ties are something that do occur, and some are very obvious, like a couple of these pictures where that tip of that baby's tongue is actually tied down too tightly onto the floor of the baby's mouth. Okay, but they're also tongue ties posteriorly towards the back, and they're also lip ties. As I say, I think that the most important thing is to know that there are such things as tongue ties and lip ties, and that the recommendation is that you actually take your baby to somebody who actually on a regular basis deals with tongue ties, and they can assess whether it is the correct thing to actually cut it and sort out that problem, rather than actually trying to battle through and this baby has extreme problems. So yes, know that they are available, and we will have a list around from which doctors specialize in tongue ties, because if you take it to somebody who doesn't believe in tongue ties and doesn't deal with it, they can say, oh no, you can create problems and we're not going to sort it out, and you can struggle with sore and cracked nipples, and your baby can struggle because it can't actually breastfeed really nicely. And whereas somebody who deals in this area on a daily basis can just cut it and this baby will never look back. Okay, so please do get it checked out if you are, you can see it obviously, or if your nipples are sore and damaged, get a lactation consultant to come and actually examine that baby's mouth physically, and they can see if there's a tongue tie or not, and then your baby can be referred. And so that is what we really want to highlight in this instance. Okay, so we're back to our lactation station. What do you think these goodies are that are available? Any ideas? Yeah, there's no idea. A nipple massager, vibrating massager. Okay, as you say, some of you have no idea what that is at all. This is actually a warming lactation massager, and this Lavie massager has 2 pads, a heat and a vibration support for improved milk flow, helps dealing with clogged ducts, engorgement, mastitis, along those lines. Anybody has an idea of what that one is? No clue at all. As I said, there are all sorts of strange things. This one is a lactation massager, and this is a waterproof breastfeeding support for, again, clogged ducts, mastitis, improving milk flow and engorgement. Okay, as we say, one just needs to know what is actually out there. How about this one? A dungmeta knoppie. I like that description totally. Yes, a massager. This is a lactation massage roller, and the breastfeeding support to improve milk flow, reduces engorgement, and it's just really a simplified breast massage. How about that one? Yeah, a lactation massager. This is the Freedom Mom 2-in-1 lactation massager. The multiple nodes of heat and vibration, again for these clogged milk ducts to increase the milk flow, breast engorgement, and this one actually has a USB cord included as well. Okay, what do you think these are for? Cooling pads, breast soother. Yes, you can read really well off the screen. Well done. Cooling pads. You bought one. Yeah, ice packs. Terrific. This is actually a heat pack or a cold pack. So you can have it to warm that area. You can have it to cool that area. It can go in the freezer or it can be warmed as well. And that can be really, really helpful and to soothe the problems with the breast. And you can see that center has got a hole in it to for your nipple to be exposed so that actually your nipple doesn't get damaged. Okay, let's look at engorgement. I think it's you, Sam.
Sorry, I was muted. I have to tell you why I muted myself. My teenager is out for the first time at Monte Casino, and he phoned me, and my heart had a mild panic attack. So I quickly muted myself and phoned him back to make sure he was alive. And he just phoned to say he's fine. So that's why I muted myself quickly. So my heart stopped beating and it's fine.
And I'm really glad he's fine and well. Good.
All good. All right. So now we're going to have a little bit look at engorgement. So I have my big fat engorged boob with me as well. So what happens you get different types of engorgement. So one is what you call a physiological engorgement, and this happens around day 2 to 5 postpartum when you've given birth. And that's as your milk is increasing when it's transitioning from your colostrum into your mature milk. All right. So it's very normal for the breast to feel a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier, and but what our aim is to keep the areola nice and soft and elastic so that we're not affecting the milk flow. Because if you think about trying to feed from a very pumped up balloon, it will be very difficult for that baby to latch on, and it'll be very difficult for the milk to flow out really nicely. So the idea is to keep it nice and soft and elastic and flowing. So we're going to go through a few ideas of what to do. All right. So first, the signs of engorgement is that the breasts feel hard, tight, and they often go a nice shiny color because that skin is really, really stretching. All right. So yeah, I promise you, everyone wants to come up and give you a nice big hug to say congratulations on your baby, and you just want to push them away because it can be really painful. When you feel the breasts, they're often warm to the touch. Okay, so they're having a little bit of heat happening there. They can feel very tender, and some moms describe it as like a throbbing feeling. All right. The engorgement may extend up into the armpit. I get many, many phone calls and photographs of moms with this nice big lump under their armpits. They actually can't put their arms down and they get very panicky, and that is just a part of the engorgement as well. Your areola can feel extremely hard, all right? And your nipples can be very tight and flat, all right? And also mom can feel like she's got a bit of a temperature. And if she did take a temperature, there would be a bit of a low grade fever happening. So altogether, not a great feeling. So the idea is to try and prevent this engorgement. All right, so the ways that we prevent this engorgement, Lynn, if you can go to the next slide. Okay, the first step is to actually nurse early and often. And I think that's the most important thing, because we are socialized a little bit to be thinking that babies feed every 3 or 4 hours, or, you know, that they don't need to be, you know, they need to feed on a schedule. And really babies need to be fed whenever they want to be. So early and often, and try not skip feeds. Okay, because that's quite an important way to actually prevent engorgement. So I know it sounds like a good idea. Now, I get this question at every single consult I ever go to, is the moms say they want to give a bottle at night so that dad can have a chance to feed and they can have a chance to rest. And it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, because it sounds like a good idea. It really does. It sounds delightful when you're really tired. But what often happens is now you've skipped a feed. Okay, so now the breasts get quite engorged. You're now putting yourself a little bit at risk for a plugged duct or a mastitis. And by the time the baby actually does get to breastfeed, you're now very engorged and you're having all of these symptoms. And the other thing is then you have to either have express to give the baby a bottle, or you're actually completely skipping a feed. So later on, when everything's going well and you're comfortable and your breastfeeding's established and everything's great, you can start playing around a little bit. But definitely in the early days, for at least the first 6 weeks, I say try your best not to skip feeds and actually prevent this. There's hundreds and hundreds of things that dad can do to help you out. He doesn't always have to give a bottle to bond with baby or help you out. The big thing is to nurse on demand. Okay, so I don't like the idea that baby is an app. All right, I know there's lots of apps around there and feeding apps, and one of the first things I do when I arrive is I delete the mom's app, because I find she's quite reliant on that. And what I'd like you to rather do is to actually learn your baby's cues about when are they hungry, when are they windy, when are they full, rather than relying on an app that beeps, because these are little human beings. And think about yourself. One day you are starving and you eat everything that's put down in front of you. The fridge opens 800 times a day and you're just hungry. And then the next day you're a little bit like, nah, not interested. You know, it gets to 12 o'clock and you realize you haven't had anything to eat because you actually haven't been that hungry. And your little human babies are exactly the same. So one day they're going to want to eat every hour and a half because they are starving, or they're feeling a little bit of hydration issues, or they just need a love. You know, they need you. So, you know, breastfeeding is a little bit more than nutrition. So some days they just need love and other days they don't. So nurse on demand, and this really helps to actually prevent the engorgement as well. So we're not skipping feeds, and we're not feeding on our app's demand. We're feeding on our baby's demand. Then the other big thing is to actually make sure, I'm always going back to this. This is why the apple is my favorite thing. Make sure that your baby is latched correctly and the baby's actually removing milk well. So remember last month we looked at swallowing. Make sure that that milk is actually transferring and that baby's removing milk. Because if that baby's not removing milk, it's the same as that. It's the same as you skipping a feed or not feeding the baby enough. All right. And if the baby is not nursing from you directly for whatever reason, it's quite important to then express. So we're going to chat a little bit about hand expressing in the questions, because I see there's been a lot of it. So hand express a little bit, use your pump, and make sure that you're expressing at every feed if your baby's not with you or not nursing from you, to help prevent this engorgement. And then if you do get engorged, because sometimes it just happens and there's nothing, and we have to treat it, all right? So quite importantly is a little bit of massage. All right. So what you can do is you can start with a little bit of a cool compress. Okay, so you can hear we use a lot of different compresses for different things. So you start with a cool compress, okay, and then you followed by a moist, warm compress before massaging or before nursing. And then we gently massage. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out the best angle from this. So we gently massage from the outside towards the inside. And I'm really emphasizing the word gently because we don't want to be bruising the breast. We don't want to be damaging anything. So nice, gentle massages from the outside towards the nipple and slowly but surely getting that milk out nicely and softening the area around the areola so the baby can actually latch on well. All right, and then when we talk about reverse pressure softening, I've actually got a nice slide on the next one. And then we do a little bit of hand expressing and a little bit of reverse pressure softening. So I'm going to start with the hand expressing. What I want you to do is you create like a C shape with your hand and you press back and down and then you press towards the nipple. So what I don't want you doing is I don't want you squeezing the nipple like this to try and get the milk out. Think about a toothpaste tube. If you squeeze your toothpaste from the tip, you get very little toothpaste out. If you squeeze your toothpaste from the bottom, you get a lot of toothpaste out. And we slowly work our way around the breast, making sure that we are managing to empty all of those ducts. So again, a little C shape, we press down and back, and we then squeeze towards the nipple, but without damaging our nipple at all. Two very important things to remember is don't decrease your fluid intake, because I've seen a lot of moms who feel engorged and they think, okay, if I don't drink any water, then I'll be fine. And the other thing is to avoid tight fitting bras, because we don't want to increase our risk for mastitis. So we don't want too much.
Really important to eat and drink adequately and correctly. Okay, sleep when your baby sleeps. Okay, get a babysitter in order to sleep if necessary. Get mom or mom-in-law to come in and actually give you a chance for your baby, for you to actually catch up on your sleep. Another great thing to actually do is put baby in bed with you, skin to skin, and just be together and relax. Don't be stressed about it. Don't worry about the breastfeeding. Just lie there and cuddle your baby and actually let nature take its course, because babies love being skin to skin, and when they're awake, they love to find the breast, they love to snuggle, and all of those things are going to actually stimulate your milk supply to be increased. All of those sensations and the movement of your baby skin to skin on your chest actually triggers the correct hormones to get your milk supply going and flowing. So stop worrying and trust your body. If you really do have an actual low milk supply, power pumping can be something that is really helpful to do. So what is power pumping? It's actually adding to your baby sucking on the breast. Remember, we said, how does milk supply actually work? The more milk that is actually taken off, the more stimulation on your breasts, the more milk that your baby is going to, the more milk your breasts are going to actually make. So we're going to increase that stimulation on the breasts, and your breasts will build up that milk supply and increase it. So we want to pump, and whether you manually pump or use a breast pump, whatever you find more effective and what works for you. So you're going to pump for 20 minutes, then you're going to rest for 20 minutes. Then you're going to pump for 10 minutes, you're going to rest for 10 minutes, and you're going to pump for another 10 minutes. And that is one part of power pumping. If you need to really super boost your supply, you can do this 3 times a day. Okay, so the power pumping, we want to increase our milk supply, pump for 20, rest for 10, pump for 10, rest for 10, and pump for another 10. Okay, super boost, do that 3 times a day, and very, very quickly you should see that increased milk supply coming through. Over to you, Sam. Are you muted again?
Sorry, I keep muting myself so you don't hear the rustling and then I forget. All right, so the flip side of a low supply is actually a fast letdown or a oversupply. And the problem with this is a lot of moms think, I've got lots of milk, so it's a blessing and I shouldn't ask for help. And that's really a mistake, because fast letdown or oversupply can be equally difficult to manage and deal with as having a low supply. So usually how we notice that the mom's got a forceful letdown or an oversupply or a fast letdown is actually looking at the baby. So we see that the baby often gags at the breast. They've got this they choke often. They're gulping the milk, so you can actually hear them gulping air with every suck, swallow, breathe. So they're actually going, it's almost like they're being waterboarded when they're gulping the milk down. And you can sometimes hear them gasping or coughing because they're just battling to cope with the excessive volume of milk that's coming at them. And what we see is these are the babies who pull off the breast often. So these are the babies who latch for a few seconds, pull off, latch for a few seconds, pull off. And it becomes a very sort of agitated breastfeed. And moms have had this vision in their head of they sit down and they breastfeed their babies for 20 minutes and then they slowly win them. And now they've got this baby who's constantly agitated, gasping, pulling on and off the breast. And it becomes very frustrating for them. The other thing that can happen is that the baby actually clamps down on the nipple because it's their way of coping with the fast supply. So as that fast letdown happens, the babies now learn to compensate and they clamp down on that nipple. And that can actually be extremely painful, and it can actually cause a little bit of cracked and bleeding nipples when they do clamp down. But all they're trying to do is just to slow that flow down a bit as well. Another way we can hear that the babies have got a fast letdown is you can hear like a clicking noise. So when they're drinking, they're like actually clicking. All right. They're hearing this all the time when they are drinking. All right. And the babies are usually very, very gassy. So these are your babies who are needing to be winded constantly and have got this moany, grumpy tummy, all right, that you can hear. So they've got that gassy, terrible tummy. And there's just this general sort of discomfort around, this general around breastfeeding. They're just agitated type of babies. And that's often the milk flow. But not to be disheartened, there's quite a few things that we can actually do to slow this down. So the first thing I like to do is to actually position mom a little bit better. Okay. So I actually want mom to be laying back. Okay. During a fast letdown, gravity is your friend. Okay. So we want to use gravity to actually help that baby control the flow. So I always teach moms, and you can see I'm lying nice and back here. I'll bring my screen down a little bit. So I actually teach moms to breastfeed in a TV watching position. So a nice laid back, relaxed position so that the baby is actually feeding against gravity. So that when it wants to stop and rest, it can actually just hang out there and it doesn't have to be gulping the milk down. So a nice laid back position. And we'd like the baby actually feeding in an uphill position in relation to the mom's breast. So we lie baby nicely on mommy's tummy, because we've got this nice little tummy that doesn't go away for a while. And we lie baby on that tummy and let baby actually feed in uphill to the breast, because that really helps that baby cope nicely when that letdown happens and it's nice and fast. Okay. Then the other important thing is to actually burp your baby frequently. So we often think of breastfeeding as where you breastfeed for a certain amount of time, and when you're completely finished, you wind your baby. And that's really it's not how we want to be breastfeeding. We want to be weaning them frequently. And when we have a fast letdown, because they're gulping the milk, we actually have to wean them a lot more often. So your breastfeed is a little bit on and off, but what's happening is we need to just get those burps out. Otherwise, there are going to be these crampy tummy babies. So when you see your baby struggling, take them off, wean them, put them back. Take them off, wean them, put them back. And we just constantly do that until they learn to cope well with your flow. Another thing we can do is we can actually nurse more frequently, okay, to reduce the storage time in between feeds so that the breasts don't ever get too full. And this actually helps with that fast letdown that's overwhelming the baby a little bit, okay. Another thing that we can actually do is wait for the letdown to happen before latching that baby, because usually that first letdown is the one that is the most powerful, the most overwhelming for that baby. So what you can do is you can just have a little face cloth underneath and wait for that letdown to happen, and then latch that baby on so that they're not getting that first overwhelming letdown as well. A lot of moms feel like this is wasting milk, but I promise you, when you've got a bit of oversupply or fast letdown, those few drops are really not a problem. They really aren't a problem. You can give those to the face cloth guards as well. All right. Something that you can also do is to express a little bit before the feed. So you just hand express a little bit out, or put a milk collector on, or a manual pump is all right. We don't want to be stimulating, but we just want to express a little bit of that beginning milk off just until it slows down, and then we can latch baby on as well. So all you can hear, what we're trying to do here is just wait for that initial, that powerful flow, and then we latch baby on, and they usually cope a lot better with the milk. And as they get older and older, they start to cope much better. So this becomes less and less of a problem. I want you to try and avoid using products or herbs or anything that to reduce your milk supply, especially in the first 6 to 8 weeks, because your body is still establishing a milk supply during this time. So if we start messing with it, we often then go to the other side of the coin and we have a low supply problem. So we rather use all of these techniques to try and manage that fast letdown and that oversupply in the beginning, and it usually rights itself quite nicely. And if you are still having a lot of problems after that, then we can start together with your lactation consultant or your healthcare provider. We can start looking at ways to slow that milk down or reduce the flow a little bit as well. And then the other thing we can do is something called block feeding or full drainage expressing. This really needs to be done under the guidance of your lactation consultant, so we don't mess with the supply too much. But basically what that means is that we feed from one breast for the entire feed, or sometimes 2 to 3 feeds, and then we feed from the other breast for the next feed, or 2 to 3 feeds after that. And by doing that, we actually reduce the amount of milk that's coming through. But we do have to be very careful of engorgement. We do have to be very careful of plugged ducts and mastitis and all these things. So it's not something we recommend you just try at a whim. It really needs to be done under the guidance and care with your lactation consultant as well. And then if there is some severe cases, we can do what we call full drainage, where that is actually we allow baby to breastfeed, and then we express what's left of the milk out, and we actually let baby breastfeed again. And it all sometimes often resets your milk supply, and it can help with that fast letdown. But again, these are more in the extreme cases that we do that. We much prefer to start with the positioning and rather burping baby frequently, unless or letting the milk out a little bit beforehand, before we start going to these extreme cases. And only in very extreme cases will we actually use herbs or cabbage leaves or things like that to actually reduce the supply. And I very rarely do it before the 8 weeks mark, because we sometimes do it too well and it can cause some problems. Right, but if you are battling with fast letdown, please don't sit there and battle thinking that you're blessed and you shouldn't complain, because it really is. And I'm saying this because I hear it from moms a lot. They feel like they can't complain because they've got so much milk, and there's so many moms out there who have no milk or complain of low supply, so they feel almost embarrassed to ask about a fast letdown or an oversupply of milk. So please, if you do have this, chat to your lactation consultant. There's lots of things we can do because these babies sometimes do really struggle.
Great.
All right, so now we go on to expressing. I love Amy Schumer. She's my favorite, one of my favorite humans. And if you followed her on Instagram, she did a lot on expressing as well. All right, so there's a couple of things with expressing. So what we're going to focus on today is actually your full term healthy baby. So I'm not talking about prem babies or sick babies or anything like that. There are webinars that we're going to chat to about your prem baby and how to express for the prem baby. We're going to talk tonight about your average Joe healthy baby and the mom who wants to express. Okay, that's where we're aiming at today. All right, so the reason we put this in is because I think I get more questions on expressing than anything else at all. Is everyone needs to know how to express and what and when and what to do it. Okay, so the first thing is pumping only tells you how much milk you can pump. Okay, now that sounds very silly, but pumping is not an indicator of how much milk you have or what your supply is like. All right, and this is often the reason why a lot of moms get that perceived low milk supply that Lynne was talking about earlier, because their baby's feeding well, they're feeding perfectly well, there's no problems, lots of wet nappies, gaining weight nicely, no issues, but the mom's only able to pump 10 mils. So then her brain tells her that she's got low supply, okay? But she's actually feeding her baby perfectly, and what she's seeing is just no excess milk, okay? So what I like you to do is when you're on maternity leave and everything is going well, okay, please don't start pumping and storing breast milk for at least the first 6 to 8 weeks, because it really takes time for you to become comfortable and confident with your breastfeeding. And we really need to allow that supply to establish and stabilize based on what your baby needs to drink, okay, not based on feeding your freezer. Any of you who follow me, you know, I've been ranting this whole week about feeding the freezer. We don't want to feed the freezer, we want to feed our baby. And really, breastfeeding is hard work. I don't know anyone out there who breastfeeds and thinks this is just something super easy that you're going to do in the next week. Breastfeeding is hard work. So we need to get it right before we start adding more layers onto this. And I always use the analogy of running. I mean, we've just had comrades. There's no ways you can go run comrades if you've never even run a 5K or a 10K before. Okay, so you need to start slowly, get breastfeeding right. Once you've got breastfeeding right and you're comfortable and confident, now we can start thinking about expressing to have a little bit of milk in the freezer for a rainy day, or if you're going out or something, and starting to think about when you are going back to work. But we don't need to be thinking about this when you're in hospital. You've just had your baby and you've currently only got colostrum, and I've got moms asking me about when they should start pumping. Okay, so we don't need to do that. Okay, so then we got to look at what is your motivation for wanting to express, because I can tell you there's actually no reason to express if you are with your baby 24/7, staying at home, having no problems, because a lot of people think you have to express in order to have a good breastfeeding journey, and I'm saying you definitely don't need to do that. So what is your motivation behind wanting to express, okay, and store the milk? So we've already chatted about your partner wanting to feed the baby or help out, and as we've spoken about a few times, probably not the best idea in the early days. Okay, rather let dad wear baby and suck snot and do all sorts of things around around the baby, change nappies, skin to skin, there's bathing, winding, there's loads of things dad can do. They don't need to give a bottle. Okay, sorry, where was I? All right. And then the other thing is, why do you want to do it? So chat to your lactation consultant and let's say, okay, we want to start doing it because I'm starting to think about going back to work, or I want to, give a bottle every now and again because I'm going out. So no harm in starting to express. So the first step is to find a time when you and your baby are the most relaxed. Okay. Don't try and express when you're both overtired, exhausted, because that's often the times when the moms want to start expressing because now they're feeling overwhelmed and exhausted. So they think maybe if I express and give a bottle, it will be easier. Okay. I want you to do the opposite. Start expressing when you guys are feeling confident and happy and ready. Okay. Start with 1 or 2 expression sessions a week. Okay. Just as a practice. Okay. So you're sitting at home, you're still on maternity leave, and you've woken up and you're feeling a little bit refreshed and happy and wonderful. And you think, okay, I'm actually going to express after I've fed the baby today because we're going to start practicing. Perfect. Doesn't matter how much you get. This is just a practice. This is just to get you going. Okay. And we slowly but surely start increasing the amount of times that we express. Okay. I like you to keep about 3 to 4 feeds in the freezer. So a feed is about 90 to 150 mils. And that's just for a rainy day. You get stuck in traffic. You suddenly get sick and have to go to hospital for an appointment. To the doctor for an appointment or something. Or, life happens. Nice to have a few bottles in the freezer just for a rainy day. All right. So please, you don't need to have this massive stash. You don't need to have chest freezers full of milk. There's absolutely no reasons for that. All right. Then one of your motivations is that you're actually going back to work. Okay. So this is a very real reason to actually start expressing. Okay. So what I like to do is about 4 to 6 weeks before you are going back to work is to actually start doing some focused expressing. This is where we start expressing after each feed for about 20 minutes, okay? Or if you can do 1 or 2 power pumps a day, that really works nicely, okay? And just get really good at expressing. And here we start increasing the amount of milk that we have in our freezer. Then around sort of 2 weeks before we go back to work, we make sure that baby's actually taking a bottle nicely, okay? And that they are confident and you are confident with expressing. And then the week before you go back to work, I want you to practice as if you are back at work. So I want you to be giving the baby a bottle for the times that you are going to be away from work. And what you do is you actually express at those exact times that you're going to be away. So that when you get back to work, you're confident that whoever's looking after the baby is giving them the bottle nicely. Their babies are taking the bottle well, and you've really got your routine down on how to pump. Okay. And I like you to, people always ask, how much do I need to store? Okay. I like you to be a few days ahead of the game. So just 2 or 3 days ahead so that you're not pumping today for tomorrow, because that can be really, really stressful. And often life gets in the way. You get stuck in traffic. You have back-to-back meetings and you don't get the pumping done. So it's too stressful pumping today for tomorrow. So 2 or 3 days ahead is great. And then you use your weekends while you're only breastfeeding to actually catch up with a little bit of pumping and store enough for the week ahead as well. All right. So nice focused pumping, a good plan, and get your routines in place nicely. Okay. So when we talk about expressing, we don't only talk about breast pumps, okay? Hand expressing is really a skill that every parent should learn and practice, because your hands are always with you and they don't need electricity, okay? So we know that load shedding, it seems to have been on a bit of a lull at the moment, which is really nice, but we never know when it's going to rear its head. And we don't want to be reliant on electricity to actually be expressing milk. So we've gone through this a little bit as well, but I'll go over it again for you. A nice C shape, okay? Press down and back and press towards the nipple, and really practice hand expressing. Sometimes hand expressing works better than some of the pumps that are out there on the market. and you can do really, really well with it. So please practice hand expressing. You can do it anytime, anywhere. And there are days when you're going to forget your pump at home from work. It just happens. And at least then you'll know how to hand express. So we're preventing any engorgement or plug ducts or anything from happening. So please practice your hand expressing. A very, very good skill to have. All right. And then importantly, if you do have a pump, okay, is to make sure that you have the correct flange size, because this is often one of the issues that happens, is the moms really damage their nipples because they have the incorrect flange size, or they're not getting enough milk out because the seals aren't just happening well and the flange isn't working nicely. So what you can see is those are lovely pictures. So the one in the middle is the correct size. So what you can see is that there's a little gap between around the nipple as well, and the flange is actually flush against the areola, which is really nice, and it actually draws the nipple beautifully out. Okay, that's a correct flange size. A flange that is too small, actually there's no gaps between the nipple, and it actually really hurts, and there can be no suction and there's no pumping that's happening whatsoever. And then the most common problem is actually your flanges are too big. Okay, a too large flange is what I see more often than not, because most pumps come with a 24 millimeter, and majority of the moms are not actually measuring out at 24 millimeters. So it's often nice to get measured and make sure that your flange isn't too big, because when the flange is too big, it actually draws a whole lot of the areola into the neck of the flange, and that creates a lot of swelling and bruising, and it really prevents the milk coming out nicely. So one of the best things you can do is to actually make sure you get measured by your lactation consultant and make sure you have a good, correct fitting flange on your pump. Okay, very, very important. Also make sure that all your pieces of your pump don't have holes in, because remember, the whole thing works on a vacuum system. All right. And this helps you make sure that you're getting as much milk out as possible. Okay. Then another important thing to think about is your settings on your electric pump as well. Because I know what you all do. You all think highest setting equals most milk. So we pump that thing up to the highest thing we can get, and we try and get milk out, and your body goes, absolutely not. I'm not doing this. This is painful. All right. So what I want you to do is I want you to play around with your settings, because some moms get more milk from a very low setting, and some moms get more milk from a higher setting. So this is a time where you can use your little booklet to write things down, or your app, or whatever you want to do, and just write down and say, I was on setting 4 and I got this much milk. I was on setting 6 and I got this much milk. I was on setting 10 and I got this much milk. And just over time, figure out what your boobs actually like to do. And sometimes even through the expression session, you may need to just change the settings up and down so that you can get the most milk in the shortest amount of time, because we all know that pumping really does suck. It's awful. So it's not your favorite thing to do for most people. Some people love it, but definitely majority of people are not a fan of being attached to a pump. So we try and get as efficient as possible. All right, so those are your pumps. Then you can use things. These are the silicone milk collectors. They work really well for some people, but for others, they do absolutely nothing. And there's no way of us really knowing who they're going to work for, who not. It's just about trying it out. At least they're not ridiculously expensive. So if you are one of the people who fall into the category of it doesn't really work, at least you haven't spent an absolute fortune. But one of the uses for it is to collect milk while baby is feeding on the other side. But again, give yourself time, get breastfeeding right first before you start adding all these other factors in. And please be very careful about creating oversupply with these milk collectors, because it's as if a baby is feeding sometimes from the other side. So it's like having twins sometimes when people use their milk collectors excessively. And as I say, some moms do really well with these, others it's just not working. But it really is a nice tool for just catching that little bit extra and just topping up your stash that you have got in the fridge for rainy days. And then lastly is Some parents actually do much better using manual pumps than electric pumps. I even have one mom who, from her left boob, she could use an electric pump, but from her right boob, her electric pump didn't work at all, and she had to hand express or use a manual pump. So it doesn't mean because it's the most expensive pump on the market, it's going to be better. We really need to figure out what works well for you. And for lots of moms, that is the manual pump on their breast works really, really well. So please don't discard these things. And the other thing is that it also doesn't need electricity, and you can take it anywhere with you and they work really well. But the same applies. You have to have the correct flange size, and you got to make sure that the system is sealed so that you can get that nice vacuum pump working. And there are so many pumps on the market now. I know when I had my babies in expressing, we didn't have as much choice. And I think sometimes it's quite nice not to have too much choice, but there is a lot of choice out there. So please chat to your lactation consultant and get advice before you spend a fortune on pumps. Because really we like to look at you, we like to look at your breasts, see what sizes you're looking at, look at your lifestyle, look at your work. We really like to figure out, based on all the pumps on the market, what would fit into your lifestyle as best, as well as your budget as well. So don't just jump in and buy the first pump that you see out there, the one with the best advertising, because those aren't always the best pumps. So rather chat to someone and have a nice, there are a lot of lactation consultants who do, who have got a lot of pumps for you to try out as well first. So chat to everyone and really figure it out before you go spend a fortune, because they can be quite pricey, and we try and save money for everyone as far as we possibly can.
We will sign off to those of you who wish to actually say goodnight to us now. For those of you who have questions that you'd like answered, okay, just stay tuned and we'll try and get through as many as quickly as possible. Thank you for joining us. Stay safe and have a stunning weekend ahead.
Thanks for listening and have a good night. Lynne, I wrote them down as they were asking them, so we can try and go through them quickly.
Okay, great.
I was focused today.
Good, go for it.
Okay, so I'm just gonna, I don't know what order they're in. I was just randomly writing them down on paper, but I'll start with, is it safe to breastfeed straight after a C-section because of the medications? So the answer is yes, it is. And the reason that it is because the colostrum is such low volume that the babies actually don't get large amounts of the medication. So it is very safe to breastfeed straight after your C-section. And also the doctors are very aware of that they want you to breastfeed. So they don't give you anything that's going to be very harmful to your baby. But as your mature milk comes through and the volumes start to increase, then you just need to check if you are on any specialized medications or anything, that it is safe to breastfeed. But your C-section meds and the pain meds that you're on after your C-section are necessary. You have to have them, and then you can still breastfeed as well. So don't stress about that. Oh, and then does expressing antenatally make your baby come quicker? Was the question. So very good question, because a lot of people ask that. So if you are at a high risk pregnancy and your doctors put you on bed rest and you had a problem for preterm labor, please don't start expressing antenatally without consulting your doctor. But my question is always, why do you want to express antenatally as well? There's absolutely no reason to do it. I know it's starting to pop up more and more and more that the moms are wanting to do this. And the only time we do express antenatally is under very specialized conditions, when we know that babies are going to be, we know that they're going to be in the NICU. So that's usually for medical reasons or whatever that we do know. And then we only do it under guidance of your lactation consultant. And the trials have actually only been done in moms with diabetes, that they've done prenatal expressing. But my first question is, why do you want to do it? And chat to your lactation consultant about why do you want to do it? Because it really is unnecessary to be expressing antenatally, but it won't make your baby come earlier unless you're having issues if you do it. So don't worry about it, but I always ask the why first. Then the next question was, it's about a bleb. Lynne, so I don't know if you want to answer it because you did the whole section. It says, can you get a bleb if you are pregnant and not breastfeeding? Because this mom, after looking at the pictures, looked like she had a bleb.
Yeah, absolutely, because you have got milk in your breasts, and so you can have a bleb. And even long after you have stopped breastfeeding, you can actually have a bleb. So yes, try and relieve it like we've spoken about, but yes, it could be a bleb. Correct.
Cool. Then the next one was that I'm pregnant and I've got no colostrum coming out and no milk coming out. Is this a problem? All right. So the answer is no, it's not a problem at all. So you are producing colostrum during your pregnancy, but because you've got your high levels of progesterone, it's actually blocking the prolactin from allowing the milk to come through. So we do have some moms who produce a little bit of colostrum while they are pregnant, but it's not indicative of how much milk you're going to have after the baby's born. And if you're not seeing any colostrum, it's really not a problem at all. So please don't stress about your milk supply while you're pregnant. Because you're not seeing anything at this time, you shouldn't really be seeing any colostrum, but it's not a problem if you are or not. So don't really worry about that. We'll worry about breastfeeding after your baby's born. Learn lots about it during your pregnancy, but don't worry about your supply until your baby's born. Just enjoy being pregnant and enjoy the birth. Stop worrying about that. All right.
While Samantha's looking for the next one, okay, somebody else is asking how to access the webinar recordings. Tammy said she'll put it on the Expectant Mothers Guide Journey app, and she'll put it up next week. The previous ones haven't been uploaded yet, but she will be doing so. So download the Expectant Mothers Guide Journey app. It's free, both from Google Play and the App Store, and you can watch out for the recordings. Over to you, Sam.
Cool. So if you want to answer this as well, and she did the tongue tie section, why do babies get tongue ties?
It's just one of those things, and they can be genetic. Yeah, it's like anything else in life, you know. Some people are more prone to them and others not. But yeah, a lot of it is a genetic thing. Sometimes they actually don't know. And yeah, it's not very obvious in some babies and adults, and it's very obvious in others.
Cool. And then a very nice question is, does diabetes affect your milk supply, and can you breastfeed if you are on insulin? So I like that question because it's very important. Sometimes if you do have diabetes, you can have what we call delayed lactogenesis 2, meaning that from your colostrum to your mature milk can sometimes take a day or two longer for your mature milk to come through. So there is a potential that you may need to supplement your baby just for 1 or 2 days. It's not a definite, because it's often more in moms who are uncontrolled diabetics that it happens, but it is worth, if you are diabetic, to chat to a lactation consultant early on, so that if it does happen, you've already got a plan in place for doing that. And then, can you breastfeed if you're on insulin? Answer is absolutely yes, you can breastfeed if you're on insulin, but be aware that breastfeeding can lower your blood sugar levels a little bit. So sometimes the moms have to adjust their insulin levels while they are breastfeeding. But usually if you are on insulin, you are monitoring your sugar levels and you are adjusting your insulin accordingly. Just be a little bit aware of having low sugar levels or hypoglycemic events when you are breastfeeding. So it's just about a little bit of management around the insulin levels that you are doing. But usually our type 1 diabetic moms who are on insulin are very aware of the sugar levels and are able to manage it well. But you absolutely can breastfeed if you are on insulin. All right, just checking there. Sorry, one just popped up now. Can PCOS affect your supply? So yes, sadly, PCOS is one of the reasons for low milk supply. So if you do have PCOS, you usually know about it before your pregnancy, because you may have had issues falling pregnant. So usually your PCOS has been controlled in order for you to fall pregnant or during your pregnancy. Often the moms are on treatment with glucophage or something, and then really we don't have a problem. But PCOS can create a little bit of low supply, and often moms with PCOS have got what we call hyperplasia, or they've got low breast tissue. So it sometimes can be a reason for having low milk supply, and then we have to either use expressing or sometimes medications to increase your milk supply. And sometimes our moms with quite severe PCOS actually have to supplement with a little bit of formula, especially in the beginning, until we can get it right, and some going forward. So always a good idea if you do have PCOS is to actually do a prenatal lactation consult and go through all the ways that we can actually manage it if you do have low supply. So a very good thing to do a prenatal lactation consult if you do have PCOS, especially if it's not managed. All right. Then the next one, can smoking affect your supply? Sadly, yes. Smoking actually plummets your milk supply quite a lot. So what we really recommend is that if you are smoking, okay, obviously we want you to try your best to limit the amount of cigarettes that you're having during your pregnancy and during your breastfeeding. And we ask that if you are going to have a cigarette, to have it straight after your breastfeed, so that the baby's not getting high levels of the nicotine coming through. And it is unfortunately going to lower your supply. So it is something to have a look at, and obviously do your best to try and limit the amount of cigarettes that you are having, because it just goes plummet your supply quite quickly. The more cigarettes you have, the lower your supply. We see it quite often.
What I am going to suggest to the people who are left, if we haven't yet covered your question, won't you just put it in the chat box again in case we've missed seeing it come through, and so we know which questions still need to be answered this evening. Tammy added one thing about those recordings on the Expectant Mother's Guide Journey app, is that have your notifications enabled for the app, so we'll send app notifications as they're uploaded.
All right, so one just come through that you've been back at work for 2 days and been pumping and you're not getting any milk out. What can you do? So I always say the first thing to do is to just check your pump, make sure that your valves are new valves, because often, I don't know if you got a new pump or not, but often the valves have deteriorated and then there is no vacuum, there's no seal. So we definitely can't get milk out if there's no seal at all. And also to check your flange size, because often if your flange size is too small or too big, we can really battle to get milk out. All right. And then just to check your settings on your pump and make sure that you are pumping correctly. So maybe go have a session with with a lactation consultant and let them check your pump, let them check your positioning, check your flange size, make sure everything's working well. And just I always start with looking at the pump first, then looking at mom, and then seeing what's happening. And then also, if you're able to hand express in the meantime, just until you can get all of that sorted out, because you shouldn't be getting nothing out from a pumping session, but there are ways we can improve that. And also we look at your stress levels at work as well. And I know you probably drop watching as well, so your cortisol levels are through the roof, which often affects our pumping session as well. So I think the best thing is to maybe chat to your lactation consultant and do a nice little pumping consult. Are there any others that have come through?
No.
Okay, cool.
So people, your last opportunity, if you've got any more questions, is quickly place it in the chat box. Otherwise, we will assume everything has been answered. Did you answer the question about jaundice and supply?
I didn't see the question.
No, I didn't either. What is the question? Lindsay, if you can just place it in. I haven't seen it either.
I didn't see it, yeah.
Delia, we're glad that you won a Hypertopia voucher last webinar, and it was that you found it was lovely and so cute to see, that your baby really enjoyed it, and pleased that you took up the opportunity, and I'm really glad that you enjoyed it. Moralise says, I have a heavy letdown and hence a very fussy feeder. I'm never sure if he is done feeding because he delatches so often.
Hi, Marlies. I know Marlies, and she does have a very massive oversupply, and it is really difficult to understand if the baby's finished feeding or not, because they often want to feed often as well. Okay, and sometimes they're wanting to feed because they're so full of wind and they've got quite a bit of reflux, so they're often feeding to soothe their throat or to try and rid themselves of the wind. So it is really tough to know if they are full or not. Are they still hungry? Are they still fussy? What they want to do? So the best thing to do is to just wind your baby as well. And also, another thing to check is when you put them onto the breast, are they vigorously and nutritively sucking, or are they there just to soothe? So they do 1, 2, 3 sucks, and then they just hang out there, and you actually have to stimulate them to keep feeding them, to keep sucking as well, because often they just want the comfort of being there. They don't actually want the milk. But because you've got such a fast letdown, it just pours down their throat anyway. So try all the tips we gave you on the fast letdown, lying back, feeding uphill, all of those things, and then we can and if it's still battling, just look for that nutritive versus non-nutritive sucking. It's usually a good indicator. But I know those oversupply babies are very fussy at the breast. It's just not a peaceful feed.
Okay, the jaundice one, I didn't get to breastfeed my firstborn because of his high jaundice levels. What's the link between jaundice and breast milk? I didn't try to breastfeed even after he was discharged after a week, was afraid to.
Okay. So you do get different types of jaundice. Okay. The one that happens usually straight away is usually a physiological jaundice, meaning their bilirubin levels are too high, and usually the babies are put under lights. So the breastfeeding is interrupted a little bit because you're having to feed them quite often, because we try and flush them as well. So we want to get a lot of fluid into them as quickly as possible to flush those fluid levels out. And also they're under the lights, you're not holding them, so it does interrupt the feed a little bit. Then another reason for getting jaundice is if you did have a low supply and the baby didn't get enough milk in the beginning, it can exacerbate the jaundice a little bit. So often then we express or we give bottles in the beginning just to make sure that baby's getting enough hydration and enough fluid coming through. And then another thing you can get is what we call breast milk jaundice. And that's usually not a severe jaundice, but it does last for a few weeks. But you just keep breastfeeding, you breastfeed through it. And because the baby's levels are usually quite low, so they've got a bit of jaundice, but they're not needing treatment. So they're not needing the blue light at all. So we just keep breastfeeding, make sure that they get a little bit of sunlight treatment. So we take off all their clothes and we put them in some indirect sunlight while we are breastfeeding them. And after 2 or 3 weeks, it usually flushes out and goes away because it's just high bilirubin levels. But there's no reason to be anxious about breastfeeding your baby. But I think what a good idea is for the next one is to maybe have a prenatal lactation consult and make sure that the way you are latching baby is correct. Make sure you understand what milk transfer is. How do we know the baby's getting enough milk, looking at nappies and things. So, and just to help with your anxiety levels as well, because I know it's very stressful having a baby under those lights and in the NICU and not well. So just helping you just plan it nicely as well.
And I think that one must remember that there are very, very few times when you actually need to stop breastfeeding. And there are many, many healthcare professionals who tell you to stop breastfeeding for very minor things that is totally incorrect information. So if somebody tells you to stop breastfeeding, double check that it really is the case, because many times it doesn't need to be the case whatsoever. The majority of the time you can continue breastfeeding through all sorts of things. Okay. When should you consult a lactation specialist? I think before birth or when you experience problems. I think you've just answered that one kind of very indirectly and well.
Where can you book a prenatal lactation consult? So if you go to your Expectant Mother's Guide, there's a very comprehensive list in it, and it's on the app as well. Hey, Lynn?
Yes, and it's on the website under resources, under lactation consultants.
Yeah, and it's got it per area, and it's very easy. All of us are on there, so not a problem at all.
I'm expecting twins, C-section next month, planning to be a stay-at-home mum. So from my understanding, no bottle feeding. I must breastfeed the babies without any help at home for them, without any help at home for the milk supply. Yeah. You've got the right idea. Breastfeeding twins is no problem. It just takes getting used to being adept with 2 babies and 2 breasts. But absolutely, your body will produce enough milk, even if you're feeding twins. So yeah, particularly after a Caesar, might take a little bit more adjusting, a little bit more perseverance in the beginning, but absolutely just keep putting your babies to the breast. There is plenty of milk that will be produced, enough for both of them.
I love twins, yay.
Not someone in NST. Maritza, where can we book a prenatal consult? You stay in Nelspruit. There's not someone in. Oh, Nelspruit, I presume that. I will find out who's the closest for you and come back to you next week. Okay. Good. Anything else? Anybody? Good. On that note, thanks, Sam, for your time and your energy and your expertise. And good night, everybody. Have a stunning weekend. Rest well. Enjoy your babies if you have them. Enjoy being pregnant if you don't. And we'll see you hopefully at the next webinar. In October. Good. Good night.
Well, thanks very much and have a good evening. Thanks, Lynn, for including me.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Tam and you guys at the back.